The day I first set foot in Delridge Towers, a mid-height condominium complex on the outskirts of a bustling American city, I felt a sense of excitement for new beginnings. The buildings were arranged in a horseshoe pattern around a central courtyard, complete with a small fountain, flower beds, and a few benches where friendly neighbors often chatted. Clean sidewalks curved toward each entrance, the facades painted in pleasant, neutral tones. My unit, on the 5th floor, overlooked that courtyard with a small balcony I couldn't wait to decorate with potted plants and colorful fabrics. I'd moved from a cramped urban apartment to escape constant noise, hoping Delridge Towers would offer a calmer atmosphere. My first few weeks suggested it might. Neighbors said hello in passing, children played in the courtyard after school, and the building's doorman greeted everyone with a warm nod. The Homeowners Association, HOA, was known to be somewhat strict, but that was standard in many condo communities. I assumed it meant neat hallways and well-kept amenities, which I didn't mind. However, I quickly heard whispered tales of a particularly overzealous HOA member, Karen Arnett. In her mid-50s, with impeccably styled short hair and a predilection for pastel suits, Karen was rumored to be the condo's self-appointed appearance police. She was the one who'd measure doormats, ban wind chimes she felt were too loud, or send typed warnings if your window blinds didn't match the building's color scheme. Some residents quietly grumbled but rarely challenged her head-on, as she frequently cited bylaw sections and threatened fines. It was said that once she latched onto an issue, she hammered it relentlessly. My second month there, Karen's next issue manifested. She declared that hanging laundry or clotheslines on balconies was unsightly, a violation of the building's uniform facade policy. She posted signs instructing residents not to dry clothes outside. I'd grown up in a family that valued letting fresh air and sunshine handle some of our laundry. While the building had laundry facilities, I sometimes liked to hang smaller items or delicate fabrics on the balcony, especially when breezes blew. For me, it was about saving on electricity and enjoying that sun-kissed scent. But soon, I discovered that in Karen's world, such a natural approach was an unforgivable eyesore. Little did Karen realize that her ban on clotheslines wouldn't deter me. Instead, it would spark a creative idea that turned my modest balcony into a flamboyant stage, thrusting me into a battle of wits with the HOA's self-appointed queen of aesthetics. And ironically, that confrontation over ugly laundry would lead me to build a side gig of fashion photography that the entire building, except Karen, found delightfully entertaining. It began with a simple typed notice slipped under everyone's doors. Dear residents, it has come to our attention that some individuals have begun displaying laundry items on their balconies, either via clotheslines or draped over railings. This practice detracts from the uniform, upscale appearance of Delridge Towers and is expressly prohibited by our bylaws. We must maintain a tasteful environment for all. Effective immediately, no garments, towels, or linens may be hung outdoors. Violations will result in an official warning, followed by a $50 fine for repeat offenses. Thank you for respecting our community's standards. Karen Arnett. On behalf of Delridge Towers HOA. Reading this letter, I felt a pang of annoyance. Was my small line of laundry truly so offensive? Why label such a harmless practice unsightly? Many neighbors quietly accepted the rule. Some disliked the idea of visible laundry anyway. But for me, I considered it a normal, eco-friendly practice. The notion that one person's aesthetic preference could overrule my personal choices rankled me. The letter threatened fines, so compliance seemed the safe route. But I wasn't ready to capitulate. I tried to see if there was any exception for small items or short periods. None. The letter was absolute. No garments visible on balconies. Some neighbors, who used to hang swimsuits or beach towels after a weekend outing, grumbled. One family who traditionally air-dried kids' clothes in the sun felt singled out. Karen, it seemed, had no empathy for practicality or environmental reasons. She insisted we must maintain an elegant facade. I decided to talk to her politely, explaining how I only hung a few pieces, often short-term, and that they hardly disrupted the building's appearance. Approaching her in the lobby, I introduced myself, only to be met with a curt response. This is for everyone's good. We can't have random fabrics flapping in the breeze, undermining our look. She didn't waver. Her tone indicated the conversation was over before it began. So be it, I thought. Maybe I'd find a workaround, like a collapsible rack inside near my balcony door. But the more I stewed, the more rebellious I felt. By what authority could she micromanage the inside living portion of my balcony? Sure, it was outward-facing, but it was also my personal space. If a small patch of color offended her, that was her problem. She wanted no unsightly clothes on display. My contrarian streak suggested I could push the boundaries. Then a spark of creative mischief flickered. If she was banning clotheslines, maybe I could rebrand them as something else, like a prop for a creative project. I worked in a creative field, graphic design, with some dabbling in photography. An idea bubbled up. What if I turned my balcony into a tiny photography set, with clothes serving as models? Hanging garments not for drying, but for an artistic shoot? Karen's ban specifically targeted laundry drying, labeling it unsightly. But nowhere did the notice forbid hanging clothes as part of an artistic or creative display. The building's rules might not have an answer for that. If it wasn't about drying them, it was about exhibiting them for photography. In essence, I'd be hooking clothes on lines or racks to capture pictures. I could place a camera on a tripod, maybe a small lighting kit. I'd brand it as a personal passion project, balcony fashion photography. If done cleverly, I might circumvent Karen's rule. If she confronted me, I'd say these clothes were part of an ongoing fashion photography installation, not mere laundry. The building's bylaws presumably didn't ban balcony photography or the temporary display of clothing for an artistic shoot. The more I thought, the more I liked it. I had a modest social media presence as a hobby photographer. If I set up a streaming or photo series of fashion items dancing in the breeze, it might not only amuse me, but also amuse neighbors who found Karen's rules overbearing. It might be outlandish, but it was a legitimate creative expression. And it just might drive Karen up the wall that I was still hanging clothes, but this time for art, which might be protected. I sketched out logistics. I'd anchor a short line or two across the balcony, hang a few eye-catching outfits from my closet, maybe some vintage dresses or colorful scarves. Then I'd mount my camera. I'd do quick photo sessions or even short live stream segments on social media, describing the outfits as though they were runway pieces blowing in the wind. The comedic or artistic spin might intrigue an online audience. If Karen demanded I stop, I'd claim it was no different from decorating a balcony with an art installation. Yet I needed to ensure I broke no direct rule. I'd confirm the building's guidelines about decorating balconies. Typically, one can place planters or small decor. I'd reason that the clothes were decor. If she pressed further, I'd say it was akin to a thematic photo shoot. The line between drying laundry and displaying outfits for photography was subtle, but in principle, I was staging a set, not actually drying them. Although, ironically, the sun might still do some drying. With the plan set, I prepared to annoy Karen by abiding by the letter of her ban while wholly undermining its spirit. Over the next week, I transformed half of my balcony into a makeshift photography corner. I installed a discreet tension rod across one side, from which I could hang clothes on hangers. I also placed a simple backdrop stand, the type used in indoor studios, adjusting it so it fit the balcony's dimensions. For lighting, I used a small ring light or a reflective panel to catch sunlight. I draped a couple of interesting fabrics behind the line, giving the area an artsy vibe. The models were my own clothes, dresses, scarves, unique outfits I collected. I'd rotate them out daily or weekly, choosing different color palettes. My concept was to treat them like curated pieces for a virtual fashion show. When I'd film, I'd describe the items, explaining their style, and the camera would capture them fluttering in the breeze. It was whimsical, slightly comedic, but also had a genuine creative spark. If I could gather an online audience, maybe on a social media platform, I could label it Balcony Runway. Neighbors passing in the courtyard below sometimes glanced up, curious. They saw me fussing with a camera, adjusting garments on hangers, apparently staging a photo shoot. One day, a neighbor named Alicia hollered from below, "Are those clothes for sale or something?" I laughed, shouted back, "It's a photography thing. Just an art project." She gave me a thumbs up. Another neighbor teased me about still defying Karen's laundry ban. I smirked, replying, "No, I'm not drying them. I'm photographing them." We shared a conspiratorial grin. Word spread that I was turning the ban into performance art. On day one of actual shooting, I posted a short video clip on my social feed. Titled Balcony Fashion Show, Wind in the Fabrics. It displayed a few dresses gently swaying, set to light music. I added comedic commentary about the latest in wind-blown couture. My online friends found it hilarious, some praising it as quirky genius. A handful of building neighbors who use social media cheered me on. The general sentiment was that I'd found a creative loophole that might fluster Karen. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Karen to notice. About 3 days after I started posting, I was mid-filming, describing a floral sundress, when a sharp knock came at my door. Pausing the camera, I opened to find Karen, arms crossed, face stern. "I see you have clothes hanging outside," she said in that clipped tone. "You're aware of the bylaw forbidding laundry on balconies, correct?" I maintained an innocent smile. "Oh, these aren't for laundry. I'm doing a fashion photography project. They're only displayed temporarily for filming." I gestured to the camera setup visible behind me. "I'm streaming a creative piece." Karen's brow furrowed. "But there's still garments hung in plain view, making the building look, well, disorganized. We have rules against it." I pointed to the official letter pinned on my wall. "Your letter specifically states no garments may be hung for drying or laundry. But these are props for a photo shoot, not being dried. There's no mention of banning clothes as decorative or for photography. I'm within my rights, I believe." Karen spluttered for a moment, clearly unprepared for such a cunning interpretation. "This is obviously a loophole. The point of the rule is to keep balconies free from the appearance of laundry. If you must do photography, can't you do it indoors?" I shrugged lightly. "I prefer natural light. This is an artistic expression. Unless the bylaws explicitly forbid staging a photo shoot with clothes, I'm not breaking any rule. If you believe otherwise, please show me the specific clause." She glowered, flipping through some notes on her clipboard, but found no explicit mention of photography with garments. Frustrated, she muttered, "I'll look into it. But you're on notice. This is borderline at best." Then she left in a huff, clearly dissatisfied. I closed the door, heart pounding from the tense confrontation. But I felt triumphant. She had no immediate grounds to find me. My ploy had worked for now. I resumed filming, giggling at the irony of describing my wind-blown designs, while the person who tried to ban them stormed away empty-handed. Encouraged by that small victory, I ramped up my photo shoot game. Each day, I picked new outfits, bright scarves, flowy dresses, flamboyant hats. I arranged them on the line, adjusting angles and filming short segments describing the collection. People on social media found it endearing, an odd but fun concept. Inanimate clothes as models, swirling in the breeze, with comedic commentary. My follower count grew modestly. Some neighbors even suggested cameo pieces, volunteering interesting jackets or costumes for me to feature. It turned into a mini community phenomenon. On a whim, I set up a small ring light for nighttime shoots once or twice, capturing the flutter of fabrics under a gentle spotlight. I teased it as moonlit couture. My online friend from out of state shared my videos widely. "This is so creative," watchers said. A super imaginative way to protest a silly ban. As I refined my editing, adding playful music, the videos gained traction. Even a local influencer discovered them, praising my balcony runway for bringing a whimsical spin to suburban life. I didn't expect to become a viral sensation, but it was definitely more popular than I'd anticipated. Neighbors who disliked Karen's authoritarian style joined in with moral support. Some would watch from below, clapping or cheering when I swapped outfits. A few posted references to balcony fashion in the building's group chat. Meanwhile, a handful of others, more conservative or uninterested, politely ignored my endeavor. Karen's allies might have disapproved, but they had no official ground to object, as we were abiding by the letter of the bylaw. The vibe in the building turned lively, as people realized we could push back on Karen's dictates in clever ways. Of course, I worried Karen might intensify her efforts. Perhaps she'd attempt to rewrite the bylaw to ban any clothes displayed for any reason. If she did, that might require a board vote or membership consensus. But given how many neighbors were quietly entertained by my show, I doubted she could muster the support. For the time being, the board largely kept out of it, possibly finding it too trivial or harmless to intervene. My photo shoot was overshadowing Karen's ban with a comedic spin, and for many, that was good enough. Despite my success, I sensed Karen wouldn't let it rest. Indeed, a few weeks into my balcony runway, she circulated an email to the entire building, subject, clarification on clothesline ban. The message read, "Dear residents, while some individuals claim to be using balconies for photography purposes, please remember the spirit of our bylaw is to prevent visible garments that degrade the uniform look of Delridge Towers. Any display of clothing for extended periods, whether or not for art, is not in the community's best interest. The HOA board is reviewing the possibility of amending language to prohibit the hanging of clothing in public view for any reason. In the meantime, compliance with our established guidelines is requested. Thank you. Brenda Karen Arnett." The tone was unmistakably aimed at me. She threatened to revise the rule to forbid any clothing display. She wanted to close the loophole. Yet changing a bylaw typically required a board majority or even a building-wide vote. Some neighbors told me they'd resist that measure if proposed. They found it petty and anti-artistic. One neighbor, Jess, joked, "So are we banning the sight of clothes entirely? That's insane. Next she'll forbid wearing them on the balcony." I realized if Karen gained enough board support, I might be forced to remove my lines for good. So I decided to double down on public support. I ramped up the positivity around my project, describing it not as a rebellious stunt, but a beneficial, creative endeavor. I posted more polished videos, featuring uplifting music, comedic commentary, even short interviews with neighbors discussing how the show brightened their day. Some neighbors commented how it was the highlight of the building's otherwise dull pandemic routine, or how it fosters community spirit. By painting it as a communal, joyous event, I hoped to make it harder for Karen to label it an eyesore. In a sense, I was building moral capital, so if she tried to push a new ban, the board and membership might see me as an asset, not a nuisance. Meanwhile, my online audience grew. A friend suggested I set up a small donation link for those enjoying the content. I did, half-jokingly, labeling it "Tip the Balcony Fashion Show." To my surprise, a few viewers donated small amounts, enough to cover the cost of some new lighting or a better camera lens. My side gig was turning a mild profit, fueled by Karen's attempt to ban clotheslines. The irony was delicious. Maybe I'd mentioned that if it came to a board debate, I'm bringing positive attention to Delridge Towers. Isn't that beneficial for everyone's property values? Sure enough, Karen introduced a motion at the next HOA meeting, banning any display of clothing on balconies. She argued that we must maintain a strictly uniform exterior, free from the visual clutter of garments, whether for laundry or so-called photography. Some of her allies mumbled about too much color or the building's facade not looking consistent. But a sizable chunk of residents, including me, attended the meeting to defend the existing rules that only banned laundry drying. We insisted that occasional clothing display for creative or decorative reasons was not a problem. The meeting was heated. Karen repeated her talking points. Clothes, even if used as props, degrade the refined image we strive for. Our building is not a carnival. I stood up to respond. No one's turning the building into a carnival. My display is minimal and creative. In fact, many neighbors enjoy it. If you want to refine the rule to ensure no permanent laundry lines, that's understandable, but banning all clothing in any capacity is overkill. Are we banning costumes at Halloween next, or flags, or holiday decor? Because they're all garments of sorts. Where do we draw the line? She huffed that holiday decor was different, but the crowd seemed skeptical. Another neighbor, Lydia, stated she found my balcony show delightful, better than a dull row of identical white balconies. Another noted that if we ban clothing displays, we might also ban sports jerseys hung out for team spirit or any creative tapestry. People saw the potential for an overly broad intrusion on personal expression. The board's eyes flicked from Karen to me, sensing this was more about Karen's personal vendetta. Ultimately, the board took a vote on Karen's proposed expansion of the bylaw. The measure failed by a narrow margin, 3-2 against. Karen lost, unable to push her draconian rule. The crowd applauded lightly. Freed from the threat of a new ban, I felt relief. Karen, however, simmered with frustration, refusing to let the matter drop. She left the meeting abruptly, ignoring neighbors who tried to talk to her. In the aftermath, Karen doubled down on rhetoric that my clothes-hanging photography was tacky. She posted a letter on the building's forum claiming I was disrespecting community standards and inviting neighbors to boycott or speak out if they disliked my balcony shoots. She tried to rally supporters by stating that the open display of multiple garments daily is still unsightly, no matter if it's for laundry or photos. But ironically, her call for protest backfired. Many residents responded positively to me, praising the sense of fun I brought. Some posted, "Better to have an artistic balcony than a sterile uniform row." Others teased Karen's outdated sense of style. Even those who'd initially disliked seeing clothes outside admitted that her overreaction was worse. The building's mood turned more comedic, with jokes about Karen's fashion policing. I continued my shows, carefully rotating garments and ensuring no large piles stayed out. My lines were neat, with each outfit hung tidily on hangers. I also included disclaimers in my streams. These clothes are for demonstration only, not for drying. The comedic disclaimers delighted watchers, further fueling online interest. As the fiasco garnered more traction, I started receiving offers from small online boutiques asking if I'd feature their items in my balcony runway. If they shipped me sample garments, would I photograph them in my comedic style? Surprised but intrigued, I said yes. So my selection expanded from my personal closet to curated pieces from small brands. The entire operation took on a semi-professional bent. I started scheduling dedicated filming times, refining my commentary, building a mild brand for the balcony fashion show. My follower count climbed, the donation tips trickled in, and I realized I had turned a petty HOA conflict into a budding side gig. Seeing her attempts to enact a new ban fail, Karen resorted to more direct intimidation. She mailed me an official notice claiming I was violating the spirit of the clothesline prohibition, warning me that if I continued hanging large amounts of clothing visible from the street, I might face a $50 fine per instance. She cited some ambiguous bylaw about maintaining the building's uniform color scheme, but I recalled the board's stance that my setup wasn't illegal. She had no unilateral power to fine me without board approval. I suspected this letter was a bluff. Nevertheless, the letter unsettled me. I didn't want to wage a legal or financial battle. So I responded politely, CCing the entire board. I am abiding by the current rules, which specifically forbid laundry drying. My displayed garments are not for drying, but for photography. Unless the board has a new official policy banning decorative or artistic displays, I see no violation. If Ms. Arnett believes otherwise, I request an official hearing with the board. That same day, I posted on the building's forum, sharing that Karen had threatened me again, even though the board refused to pass her new bylaw. The community reacted with outrage. Several posted supportive messages, telling me to keep creating. People recognized Karen's letter as a scare tactic. Some joked, "We stand with the balcony fashion show, our building's top runway." Another said, "I might apply to be a real model," with a laughing emoji. Karen's attempt to isolate me had the opposite effect. It galvanized more neighbors to root for me. Eventually, the board's president, Elena, emailed me personally, assuring me that Karen's letter does not represent an official board directive. She cannot issue fines without a board majority. We have no new rule regarding your photography. Elena apologized for the stress, stating the board planned to address Karen's overreach at the next internal session. That message gave me the confidence to continue. If Karen attempted to impose a fine, it wouldn't stand. Meanwhile, my balcony shoots grew more frequent and more flamboyant, with new garments from small boutique sponsors. As summer progressed, my balcony fashion show became a quirky fixture of Delridge Towers. I do a short live stream or record a quick video a couple of times a week, each featuring a new set of clothes. Some neighbors came up with theme suggestions: retro day, beachwear, formal evening gowns, etc. I occasionally borrowed pieces from them if they had something unique. Once, we did a group cameo with a few neighbors standing below, clapping, while I narrated from the balcony. The synergy was fun, bridging folks who rarely interacted otherwise. The online aspect also flourished. My friend from out of state wrote an article on a small e-magazine about the creative approach to HOA conflicts, featuring me as an example. The comedic spin drew in readers. A local influencer hopped on the bandwagon, praising the show for combining DIY runway with suburban authenticity. I saw a moderate spike in followers, many urging me to keep going and defy the HOA tyranny. Some even offered suggestions for bigger sponsor deals. I was flattered but took it slow, not wanting to overshadow my day job. Still, it was nice to see the world enjoy what had started as a rebellious act. Karen, meanwhile, retreated somewhat from public threats. Rumor had it the board scolded her for misusing official letterhead. She still glared at me if we crossed paths in the hallway, but said nothing. I occasionally overheard her complaining that the building looked like a rummage sale, but no one took her side. People teased that she was the best marketing agent for my show, ironically, because her clampdown attempt turned me into a local curiosity. She'd inadvertently elevated me. At the next HOA general meeting in midsummer, the topic of balcony displays reemerged. The board summarized that after thorough review, they found no reason to revise the bylaw further. Laundry drying remains prohibited, but short-term displays for photography or art are permissible, Elena announced. We encourage residents to keep their balconies neat, but Ms. My Name is not violating any existing rules with her curated photo sessions. The audience applauded quietly. Karen, stone-faced, said nothing. The board also clarified that if Karen had an issue, she must bring it to the board rather than issuing personal letters. This was a rebuke of her intimidation tactics. That official statement sealed the matter. No more attempts to find me, no new bans. Freed from Karen's meddling, I continued my balcony fashion show with an easy mind. The fiasco spurred the board to implement a rule that all policy changes required a majority vote, ensuring no single member could impose personal preferences. Karen thus lost her ability to unilaterally enforce aesthetic opinions, and the building's environment grew more collaborative. As the year wound down, I realized the entire ordeal, while stressful at times, had yielded a surprising silver lining. A thriving creative endeavor that brought me small income and joyous connections. The show made Delridge Towers a friendlier place. Some neighbors who rarely chatted now bonded over the comedic notion of a runway on the 5th floor. Even a few used the show as an icebreaker with new tenants, joking, "Wait until you see the balcony catwalk in the courtyard." Over time, Karen's attempts to hamper me waned. She occasionally left passive-aggressive notes about keeping noise levels low or not letting garment racks exceed the balcony railing. But those were minor jabs, easily ignored or refuted. The building's mood turned decidedly unsympathetic to her petty crusades. She remained a board member. No one wanted the drama of forcibly removing her, but her influence diminished. The rest of the board seemed content to let the balcony fashion show continue, especially since it harmed no one and actually provided entertainment. Neighbors told me Karen might be planning to move eventually. Perhaps the embarrassment of failing to ban clothes outdoors was too great. Or maybe she's simply tired of not getting her way. But for now, she still lived in the complex, presumably stewing whenever she glanced at my flamboyant displays. If she never voiced it, I sensed she resented how her ban had backfired. I occasionally glimpsed her passing below my balcony during a shoot, swiftly turning her head so as not to watch the garments swirling overhead. The comedic irony wasn't lost on me. With Karen effectively neutralized, Delridge Towers thrived. Residents carried on with daily life, abiding by reasonable rules but ignoring petty ones. I continued my photo sessions, though with fewer updates once the initial novelty wore off. My audience remained loyal, and a handful of small indie brands still sent me pieces to feature, letting me earn a modest side income. More importantly, I'd found a fulfilling creative outlet, forging bonds with neighbors and entertaining online viewers. No more underdoor letters arrived threatening fines for unsightly laundry. If anything, I noticed that some neighbors began adopting more color on their balconies, potted flowers, maybe a small tapestry. Freed from Karen's intimidation, they introduced subtle personal touches. The building's facade took on a slightly more vibrant look, ironically matching the fashion-forward spirit of my show. Even non-participating neighbors enjoyed the relaxed environment. The dreaded uniform monotony that Karen demanded no longer overshadowed the joys of personal expression. In the final assessment, Karen's attempt to ban clotheslines ended up fueling my imaginative pivot, generating a comedic and partial money-making project. The building overcame a petty rule with collective disregard, championed by a dash of cunning on my part. If Karen had left me alone, I might never have discovered this flamboyant side hustle. The entire fiasco served as a testament to how a stifling rule can spark unexpected creativity, uniting neighbors under a shared sense of defiance. And in the end, the building ended up more vibrant, more open-minded, and ironically more fashionable, thanks to the meddling that tried to ban laundry from balconies. And so it ends. Karen's ban on unsightly clotheslines backfired brilliantly, paving the way for my balcony fashion show. Through comedic defiance, I exposed the silliness of her edict, forging new friendships, and even launching a small revenue stream. Meanwhile, Karen, who aimed to stifle personal expression, stood powerless as the board refused to revise the bylaw for her. The building found itself happier, more creative, and unbowed by petty rules. In that final, uplifting conclusion, personal freedom and community spirit triumphed over a self-appointed style dictator's misguided sense of uniformity. The balcony fashion show lives on, a playful testament to how a bit of inventiveness and solidarity can outshine even the most stubborn Karen.